Welcome back to the Pitch to Profit podcast. I am your host, Oliver Keane. Today I am joined by a very special guest. He is a lifelong Manchester United fan, a broadcast journalist and executive producer at BBC Radio Manchester, executive producer of BBC Squad Goals, director of Melting It Production, matchday radio commentator for Manchester United TV, covering the under-18s, under-21s, women and first team of Manchester United, and the co-host of Inside Carrington alongside Helen Evans. Thank you, Liam Bradford, for joining the show. How are you doing, Liam?
Yeah, really well. It's a long list for you to get through that, isn't it?
Enjoyable, though.
I tell you what, we can add something else as well if you like. I also brew beer commercially for a pub as well. So I'm a busy man. And
it's an ever-expanding list.
It is. It's great fun. It's absolutely brilliant.
So for those who haven't watched the show before, this is a football business podcast. We look at behind the scenes, interviewing different stakeholders within the world of football, finding out about their careers, their opinions, and giving advice to other people who want to break through into the industry. So if you enjoy this interview and other interviews like it, please like, share, and subscribe for future interviews, and we'll get into it. So Liam, the first question I always ask people is about the club they support. You're a Manchester United fan. How did you get into that?
This is a daft one, right? So you normally support the team from where you're from, or the team that your dad supports, right? That tends to be the given thing. I had an added curveball thrown in the fact that my dad worked for Sharp when I was growing up,
right.
And Sharp were obviously the shirt sponsor of Manchester United. And although my dad is a West Brom fan and he took me to see West Bromwich Albion and Kidderminster Harriers, he then took me on a family day to watch Manchester United absolutely hammer Nottingham Forest. And that was it. I fell in love with the style of football and I never looked back. That will have been, well, I don't know, 92, 93, somewhere around there. And from that point onwards, I've always classed myself as a Manchester United fan. Got my first season ticket in 2002. And then I've been a season ticket holder pretty much ever since. It's one of those where the season ticket, as I've started to do more and more work for the football club, has been utilised by me less and less. But
yeah, I mean, as someone who's into his West Midlands football as a Birmingham City fan, I can say you're quite lucky that you didn't end up going down your dad's route of West Bromwich Albion and ended up as a Manchester United fan.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of those things that my dad will never forgive me for, but it's his fault, not mine. So
I like that as well about the shirt sponsor, because you never hear that, and Sharp is quite an iconic one as well on the retro Man United shirts. So
I think probably cool. Up there with, Crown Paints for Liverpool, or, Thistle for Leeds United, or whatever it is. NEC was on the front of the Everton shirts in that retro period as well. It's that kind of thing. And it's only because there were tickets available for the sponsors on that family day that we ended up going. And it was, just one of those things.
Do you remember the score in the Forest game?
No. Only that it was one-way traffic and Manchester United. If I went back and had a look, I could probably figure out the year. But there've been a lot of memories since then that have probably blotted it out. A lot of good memories and some not so good ones along the way.
Yeah, but definitely a lot of good memories. That's for sure. And it's a cool experience now that you get to work for the club you support, which is absolutely amazing. But before you got into supporting Manchester, not before you got into supporting Manchester United, but before you were working at the club, you broke into broadcast journalism. So take me through that. What was your experience like with that, and how did you get into it?
Yeah. So this is a fairly lengthy story, so you're going to have to put up with me chatting at you for a little while. I was working as a barman, chef, cellarman, realised quite quickly that was something that I loved to do, but had no real future in it in terms of achieving what I wanted to achieve. So I decided to go and work elsewhere. Then, while I was working elsewhere, realised that what I needed was to go to university. So I went to university. And then while I was at university, spent my student loan essentially following Manchester United around the world. Whilst I was doing that, I was also working for one of the Manchester United fanzines. if you're unaware of what a fanzine is, it's a publication, print publication, made by fans for other fans, to give unofficial opinions about stuff that's going on at your football club. And Manchester United had three main fanzines. There was United We Stand, that was run by a very famous journalist and really good egg called Andy Mitten. And United We Stand is still in print now. There was Red Issue, and there was the one that I worked for, which was Red News, which was set up and run by a guy called Barney Chilton. It was Manchester United's very first fanzine, and I used to go to match days and sell the print version of the magazine on the street. So I'd be one of those guys shouting at you from the side of the street as you were walking down, trying to sell you the newest version of Red News. Barney didn't enjoy doing a lot of the media stuff, and I did. I've always been a bit of a gobshite, so I took that on from him, and I was working a little bit for IMUSA, the Independent Manchester United Supporters Association, as sort of their spokesman, and as Red News' spokesman, etc., etc. This story is going somewhere, I promise. Then in 2008, Manchester United won the Champions League in Moscow. I was in Moscow that night, and it was incredible. Came back and did a little bit with BBC Radio off the back of that. Right. A year later, in 2009, I got a call from BBC Radio 5 Live saying, will you come on a special that we're going to do after the final in Rome? Come to Manchester Town Hall, sit here with broadcasting greats like Arlo White, Ian Dennis, Alex Stepney was on the panel, Henry Winter was on the panel, the journalist from the Telegraph. And the expectation was that we would be doing it from Manchester Town Hall after Manchester United had won the 2009 Champions League final. And as it turned out, Manchester United did not win the 2009 Champions League final. So we end up going and doing this show. And there was a woman, the producer was a woman called Claire Ackling, and I owe her an awful lot, Claire. She was absolutely brilliant. She just sort of said, can I keep your number in case we need anything going forward? And I went, yeah. And obviously we get phone calls here and there, and we sort of built on that relationship. Later in 2009, middle of the transfer window in the summer, Cristiano Ronaldo left Manchester United for the first time to go and join Real Madrid. And obviously it's a massive day. I was working full time at a supermarket as a department manager, and had a day off. So I went with my Red News hat on as the assistant editor of Red News. I went down to Old Trafford and literally went from media truck to media truck, and touted myself out as the assistant editor of Red News, and would you like to talk? And everybody got me on board, and I did every major broadcaster that day. Major broadcaster. It was great. The last call that I got was from BBC Radio Manchester, from a woman called Sarah Collins, who is another who I owe an awful lot. In fact, I go so far as to say I owe Sarah my entire journalistic career. She was the one that gave me my start, but she phoned me from her mobile phone, and instead of it being a withheld number, I then had a contact number inside the BBC. So I went in and I did that, and then we were backwards and forwards in communication, and I said, is there any work experience going? And she said, yeah, come in, have a couple of weeks. So I took 2 weeks off work and went and did 2 weeks at the BBC, and then I spent 12 months after that working 7 a.m. till 4 p.m. at the supermarket, leaving the supermarket, driving to the centre of Manchester, and then spending the evening working on sport programmes on BBC Radio Manchester. Wow. I then got the gig as the co-host of their Manchester United programme Red Wednesday, which I hosted for 4 years alongside great people like Steve Wyeth and Bill Rice. I co-hosted with David May for a long while, the Manchester United player that ended up winning the treble. And it was fantastic. I then sort of got a little bit more work through them. And again, that was through good fortune and being in the right place at the right time and making sure that I took the opportunities that were given. And eventually one day somebody phoned in sick and it was like, have we got anybody that can do this? And I put my hand up from the corner of the office and went, I can. And Sarah took a chance on me and I never looked back. From that point onwards, I was in. And then in 2011, my first real journalistic break came, and that was to cover Lancashire County Cricket Club in their 2011 County Championship 40 over and 2020 campaigns.
Right.
So from April all the way through to the close of the season. It just so happened that season they were playing in Liverpool at a place called Egbert while Old Trafford was being refurbished. And that meant, for whatever reason, Lancashire ended up winning the county championship that season for the first time in 77 years. And I was the main commentator, did every over of every match over the course of the summer. Yeah. And again, a little bit of right place, right time, a little bit of, hard work, foot in the door, a little bit of competency. I think, there has to be a level of ability, I guess, to be able to do that. Then at the end of 2011, I ended up going back and realising I had no job because I wasn't covering the cricket during the winter, and moved on to news and programmes. And another incredible woman that I owe an awful lot to, Michelle Daniel, was the news editor who helped me go and get my producer wings, essentially. And right. I worked really hard on programmes at BBC Radio Manchester in terms of producing those. And then there was bits and pieces of work coming at 5 Live on 606 and Fighting Talk, and I was freelancing here and there, and it was absolutely brilliant. And then in 2012, I got my staff job at the BBC and never looked back, really. That was where I got all of my experience: rugby league, rugby union, cricket, football. We covered Olympics. We, did major tournaments. We did boxing. And it was incredible. And all of that was down to Sarah, really. So I owe her an awful lot for allowing me the opportunity to do that.
That's amazing. And everyone has their own unique journey, and you can tell through yours you've definitely worked hard and a bit of right place, right time. There's a few things to dissect there. First of all, everyone spends their student loans on things they don't need. And going away and following Manchester United might be a need for the heart, but not necessarily a need financially. But it worked out in the end.
I got more out of. I got more from spending my student loan following Manchester United than I did from the English literature degree that I actually read, that I actually took. Now, whether that's luck or judgment, I don't know. It's definitely luck. But it worked.
Maybe they should do degrees in following your team home and away, to get people into that broadcasting career or whatever they want to do within football. But, one of the things I've mentioned on the show before is when you're breaking into the sports industry, there will be an element of luck, but it's also going to be hard work and dedication, knowing you want to be there and what you want to end up doing. And you said, you had 3 wonderful women take a chance on you throughout your early stages of your career, including Sarah, who you particularly mentioned, but also, you went out as, doing your job in the shops, in retail, but also going out in the evenings and doing the sports stuff. And you went to every journalist after Cristiano Ronaldo's departure as the editor, and you asked them, and if you don't ask, you don't get a chance. So I think that's really cool.
You know that phrase about making your own luck?
Yeah.
Right? There is a level of making your own luck where you basically knock on every door and hope that there's an opportunity when somebody answers it. But if you leave, if there's 100 doors in front of you and you only knock on 10, then 10% luck coming your way. If you knock on 99 of those doors, you increase your chances 9-fold.
100%. 100%. It's just a background. People all know this anyway, but when I'm doing these interviews for this channel, obviously it's a new channel, I will ask people, and sometimes you'll get a no answer or just a no, but then you'll get one yes, and that one yes turns into an interview, and it's a lot of fun to do. So, and it's an opportunity.
what I would say is that there's never a no. It's always just a not right now. So those people that you ask and they say no, it will be because they're too busy, or because they're used to doing things where there is a substantial payment attached to it because they value their time, or it's wait until your audience is a little bit higher and then I'll reassess that situation. And that is fine because people understand their worth.
100%.
But I've always been a firm believer in, I was really fortunate to have people give their time and effort to me. So therefore, it's my duty to make sure that I give my time and effort to people that I might be able to benefit in some tiny way.
100%, 100%. I think that's an important lesson to learn. I like that. Not a no forever, just a no right now, and keep persisting. So you got your full-time job at BBC in Manchester, and I mentioned in the very extensive list at the beginning of your career achievements that you're an executive producer of BBC Squad Goals. Can you take me through that, how that started and how that's going in general?
Yeah, that's this is one of those astonishing stories that if anybody that's ever worked in local radio will listen to and go, how on earth have you managed to do that? So I went away on a training attachment with the BBC where I was delivering studio training and editing training to local radio stations as they were having new technology installed in their stations. And I got back from that and struggling really to find a fit again, because obviously I've been away from Radio Manchester for a while and we were just trying to figure out what the best option was in terms of bringing me back into the fold. Whilst I was in that sort of period of flux, I spotted a need on a Saturday afternoon. So again, it comes to a technicality. Local radio stations, BBC local radio stations, do not have the rights to be able to put EFL football, Premier League or EFL football online on a Saturday afternoon.
Right.
So the EFL and the EFL clubs retain the rights to be able to put their commentaries on the internet. That means for stations that broadcast on FM, DAB, medium wave and the internet, they can put the football on 3 of those channels, but not the 4th. And we all know that the 4th is the biggest one. Like the online rights are absolutely huge. What that meant was that we had to have something on those channels that basically said the program that you're looking for is currently unavailable. And I thought to myself, this is ridiculous because we've got 30 stations on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock playing out the same looped message saying, you know, because of rights restrictions, this is unavailable. And it just seemed like a waste. So I did a little bit digging and tried to figure out whether there was a program that we could come up with that fed the scores in a fun way to each of those 30 stations, that made sure that anybody that did tune in with their smart speaker, with their phone, off their computer, on their laptop while they were on a train, wasn't getting a looped message. They were actually getting a radio program that had a little bit of character about it.
Yeah.
So I came up with a pilot, came up with the idea, took it to my boss. My boss went, that's a really good idea. I'll take it to my boss. So then had a meeting with my boss and my boss's boss and the head of sport for the whole of local radio. Right. And they went, is this physically possible? And I went, I don't know. I need to go away and figure out what the technology is behind that, and I'll let you know. Anyway, month later, figured it all out, realized that it was possible. We could do it. It took a little bit of money. It took a little bit of time, but they went, and I think potentially for the first time ever, all right, off you go. Like, go and do something that's never been done before in terms of breaking into transmission chains, routing different things to different places from different places. It hadn't been done previously the way that we've done it.
Yeah. And
it's been a rip-roaring success. We've been going for 4, I think we're into the 5th season now, and we've had some brilliant presenters on that. We started out with Sani Rudravajula, who, what a guy. he's now working Sky Sports and 5 Live. He does match day commentaries on or sort of reports from grounds on a Saturday afternoon into the biggest sports show in the world. And that's sort of been brilliant to be a part of his journey. And Sani did it alongside an incredible dude called Joe Thompson. Now, Joe's no longer with us, unfortunately. Joe was a professional footballer that played for Rochdale and Tranmere and Bury and others. And he got cancer twice. The second time he had cancer, he came back from his cancer and scored the goal that kept Rochdale in the Football League in the most incredible final day of the season drama. And he came on board and it was absolutely brilliant. But then, unfortunately, he picked up cancer for the third time and he didn't survive it. And I miss him. I miss him every single day. The guy was an absolute superstar. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But he did such an incredible job at getting that program off the ground. So him and Sani did brilliantly. And then Henry came in and took over, and he took over from Sani, and we brought Calvin Andrew along with us. And Calvin's just incredible. What a guy Calvin Andrew is. Calvin played for Crystal Palace alongside the likes of Wilfried Zaha and Victor Moses. He then went to Rochdale. He played in plenty of other places as well as a striker, all across the EFL, and is now, he's our go-to guy. And we've gone from him being a little bit nervous, a little bit unsure about coming in and doing that stuff, to him being the best that you could ask for. He drives the desk, he presses the buttons, he hosts the show, he's just fantastic. He's absolutely brilliant. And we've got a new guy in this year, and we did some expressions of interest, and we dragged somebody in from the Northeast, a guy called Harry Roy, and Harry has just gone from strength to strength. So it's a real breeding ground for new talent. Squad Goals, I think that was sort of one of the pillars that we put in place right at the very beginning, and it's been a great success. And I think it's one of the things of my BBC career that I'm most proud of.
It is amazing, and for those who don't know, I got to go and sit and watch how they produce the show, and it's great. It's informative, but it's also hilarious. There's good banter on it, but it's not forced or anything. It's natural, and I met Calvin through that as well, and now he's a mate of mine, and Calvin's great at the job. And because I did see him in that season, I saw him once towards the beginning of the season when you did the show, and once more closer to the end. And there was a difference in self-confidence in him. But the show was also getting better and better as things went on. I know you mentioned Joe. It was really sad in the football world when Joe Thompson passed as well. You saw the impact he had on so many different people. It's amazing that he was a part of your show when he was. I think it is a great show, and long may it continue. And I know you also have guests on there, don't you, sometimes that just appear as a one-off. What kind of who have you had on there before?
Loads. Absolutely loads. Rob Earnshaw, that was one that we've had on. So Rob Earnshaw played for West Bromwich Albion, and he was out in Israel for a while playing, and Wales, of course. We've had, some of Calvin's teammates come in and do it. Ben Thornley from the class of 92 has been in, and he's done a little bit. So occasionally we have these one-offs that slide in to come and help us out. But we always have a third voice, and that third voice tends to be somebody that comes in from elsewhere, whether that's a Northampton fan or whether it's somebody that is, in London, or somebody that's come up from Southampton, or whatever it might be. We try and sort of get around the country to make sure that we're as representative as we can.
That's brilliant. Well, I'm going to advocate for more Birmingham in the show, but other than that,
I'm down 100%.
No, that's really cool, and I didn't realize. You were mentioning about the transmission and how it was just this looping signal. So you've identified a gap in the market there that needed to be fixed. And now it's a long-standing show. It was on every Saturday and Tuesday, right?
Yeah. It's not Tuesday. We don't do Tuesdays anymore. We've extended Saturdays instead. So now instead of 2 hours on a Saturday, we do 4 hours on a Saturday. But because local radio, because the BBC is funded in a really unique way with the licence fee, we have to be careful about what we're spending our money on. And when we realised that actually the need was more on a Saturday than it was on a Tuesday, because there are evening shows that already go out during the week that can go online.
Right.
We stopped Tuesday, and now we just do Saturday to make sure that we're covering Saturday off. It felt like the right thing to do.
Brilliant. That's very cool. So, as well as doing BBC Squad Goals, you have your own independent ventures. You mentioned brewing your own beer, but also you're a director of Melting It Productions. Can you take me through that and what the experience is like with that?
Yeah, this is brilliant. So I met a guy called Andy Bell, who Ollie knows, and Andy was working at BBC Radio Manchester, and I'd just got back from the training attachment that I was talking to you about.
Yeah.
I walked back into the office, and my wife, who worked at BBC Radio Manchester at the time, said, "You need to go and talk to him. You'll really like him." So I wandered off and walked into Andy in the middle of a total meltdown. Like, you could see, like, the sweat was pouring off him. He was stressed, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And he was having a bit of a disaster with an edit that he was working on. He'd lost a bit of footage, and the software systems that we have at the BBC can sometimes, if you go through the wrong process, can it cause you some issues in terms of what we call nested projects, which is what had happened. And he didn't have enough space in some of the servers to be able to save what he needed. So I fixed all of the issues for him and went, "Look, this is what it's about." We sorted that, and he went, and I went, "What are you working on?" And he went, "Oh, I'm working on this documentary. I've spent 3 months embedded with Greater Manchester Police in various different departments, and now I'm pulling it all together into this hour-long documentary." He said, "Do you want to take a listen?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." So we went into an edit suite and we started listening, and I started suggesting little changes, and I watched his ears prick up as I was suggesting that we should make a change. And anyway, we ended up on the edit together. So I was helping him edit the whole thing, and we realized quite quickly that we have the same mentality when it comes to that process. So, for example, I will happily spend 20 minutes dealing with a single second of audio. You know, if it doesn't sound right, if there's a click, if the fade's not right, if it doesn't quite go where you want it to go, I will spend 20 minutes fiddling with a second to try and make that sound as good as I can make it sound. And Andy's exactly the same. That level of detail was right up Andy's street. Anyway, friendship grows. He decides to leave the BBC. I decide to leave the BBC. We end up coming back together, and we've set up a production company called Melting It Productions. And Melting It Productions basically provides content for people that can't do their own content, whether that's video because you need a promotional video for your website, whether it's social media content, whether it's podcasts, whether it's filming podcasts, because as you know, we're in a world where audio only podcasts are becoming less and less of a thing because everybody needs their social content, but not everybody is set up like you and I are to sit here and do these podcasts with permanent cameras and good light sources and great microphones. So we can go out and take the whole thing on the road with us, and that's what we've been doing. And it's been really joyful, you know. It's been a little bit more relaxed, it's been a little bit more chilled, but it's still allowed the pair of us to sort of stretch our creative brains, tell stories the way we want to tell stories, and that's it's a really nice extra string to the bow.
It's great having two mates as well with a similar mindset to venture into a creative project together.
It's actually three of us as well. Like, it's Andy's old university mate, somebody that he grew up with, is the third member of that trio. So yeah, it's better. 3 mates. It's even better. Yeah,
even better. And I was speaking to Dr. Alan Tong on last week's episode, and he said,
"What a guy!
Amazing guy." And he was saying you should always find a new string to your bow. Whether it's an independent venture or working for someone, always adding more to your talent.
And don't stop learning. The second that you stop, it then becomes really hard to do again. So I had no idea how to operate a camera before I left the BBC. I was very good at audio, I was very good at understanding what the creative process should be, but I couldn't technically operate a camera. And now I have 4 cameras, a drone, 10 lenses, lights, and I can operate the camera. That's adding strings to your bow, exactly as Alan said.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a great thing to do. So at this point, as we've talked about, you've been involved in audio, broadcast journalism, production, creative ideas, your independent ventures, and now we go on to what a lot of people will have clicked on the video for, your career at Manchester United. We talked about earlier, you're a fan of the club since you were a boy. How did this come about, you working for the club?
So, while I was still working at the BBC, I got a call from a producer at MUTV, which is Manchester United's in-house media team, in-house TV channel, a guy called Lee McGeehan, and Lee's one of their senior producers, and they didn't have a commentator for an under-18s game. So he asked me if I'd be up for doing it. Now, I'd obviously been suggested to him. Still haven't quite figured out where that suggestion came from, but he got hold of my number and he gave me a call. And then I ended up in a situation where I wanted to say yes, but because I was a full-time journalist at the BBC, there is a conflict of interest. And I then had to go away and speak to my boss and my boss's boss, and I had to fill in a form, and I had to make sure that that conflict of interest was declared, and I had to make sure that my direct line manager was okay with me going and do this. And eventually, once we got all of that squared away and sorted, I was allowed to go and do a couple of these under-18s commentaries for Manchester United's academy. Then as time went on, it became, instead of 2 a season, it became 5 or 6 a season. And then the next season it was 5 or 6 of those, a couple of under-21s. And then it was, actually, we need a radio commentator for our first team. Will you come in and do that? And I was like, yeah. So then I did every game of the season as the radio commentator, and that was a lot of fun. And then things changed again the following season. And for last year and this year, I have done every game as the only commentator for Manchester United, really. So I do TV and radio commentary as a hybrid, which is a really tough thing to do, but really enjoyable for every first team game. Same for every women's first team game. And then we do TV comms for under 18s and under 21s. And all of it from that one phone call that Lee made back in the day. This was, I have to say, this was part of the reason for leaving the BBC as well. I was starting to get a little bit more work, and I wanted to free myself up and go freelance, and that's what I did. And I've not looked back. It's been 3 years, and it's been absolutely brilliant.
And that you will have had so many incredible experiences as well, and the club, had so many changes even in the 3 years, for different reasons and such. So what kind of preparation does it take for the commentary? Because you always hear about it, and the general, it is quite tough. What do you have to do for each individual game, whether it's a big game or a small game? I imagine you treat it the same.
It's about 3.5 hours of prep for each game that I do. I think the easiest thing to do here. Can I show you, Ollie? Is that all right if I share my screen?
Yeah.
Is that okay? So if I can show you this, it's much easier for me to sort of show this to you than it is for me to try and explain it. So for every game, I fill out this. This is my stats document. And my stats document has something for every single Manchester United player in the squad. I then have something for the majority of players. This is the Bournemouth game, which happened last night when we're recording. Something for each of those as well. It's got top scorers and various bits and pieces, formations from last time, some facts from Opta. And then as we scroll down here, I've got formations from the last 3 games that each of the side has played. And that helps me out when I'm doing team news before the game. The last 10 fixtures between the two sides, then head-to-head records in the Premier League and all-time, then referee, stats, how often they give Manchester United a yellow card, how often they send a Manchester United player off, or how often they send a Bournemouth player off, plus their record for this season. So what games so this is the games that Simon Hooper has been in charge in, how many yellow cards, how many times he sent someone off, how many straight red cards, how many penalties, all of that stuff. Then I've got Manchester United's backroom staff, just in case I forget any names.
I hope they're all happy with those pictures.
No, I haven't told them. Then I sort of have that's my script for my highlights piece, and then penalties and who takes what penalties in what way and what those scores have been over the course of the season. So I create this document every single game that I do, whether it's first team, women's team, under 18s or under 21s. And then in addition to that, I have a tablet that I use, and on that tablet I will write out the formations and I will write additional stats on top of the document on that tablet, which allows me to pinch and zoom in on each of those players. It allows me to swap substitutes in and out. So I've got a constant view of who's playing in what position, which helps me with player identification as we go through the game.
That's so cool that you gave us an insight into the sheet as well, so we can actually see your style of. Because I imagine every commentator will have their own.
Everyone does it different. Everybody does it
their
different.
own like unique how they do it. Some people might prefer to do it by hand. I know things change. Obviously, it's more technologically, but
100% people still do it by hand, and the reason for it is that some people are really visual learners, so they need to see it. Some people learn by taking something from one place and transferring it to another place physically. Yeah. So if they're writing their notes down, it helps them commit those things to memory. And what I find is that commentators are quite an intelligent bunch. They're also quite a nerdy bunch. Yeah. They like numbers. They like to remember stuff. They like to sort of store things in their brain because it helps them out in their job. And I think each of those people is aware enough of their own strengths to be able to say, this is the best way that I learn. I think the other thing that I would just point out is that out of all of the stats that I put in any document, I would suggest that 95% of them never make it anywhere near going out on air. They're just there in case.
Well, this is what I was about to say, because every game is different in every season, right? There will be something unique in that game. So as a commentator, I imagine you have to be situationally prepared to need a stat, potentially. You know, let's say, I don't know, Harry Maguire scores a headers. How many headers has he had this season? But you might not need that at all if he doesn't score a header. Yeah, there you go. But you have to be prepared for that any given situation, like you said, with if there's a controversial red card, for instance, or number of bookings or whatever. Well, how many yellow cards is there a pattern with this referee or not? Is it just this game? So I find that really interesting as well. And the fact you said that 95% of it won't even come up shows that you still need it, though.
So my job is it's weird. The radio commentary part of my job is designed to explain to somebody that cannot see the game what's going on in the game, which means the radio commentary part of my job includes all of what I refer to as pitch geography. So I might say Luke Shaw picks up the ball and everybody goes, okay, the ball's at Luke Shaw's feet. But actually what you should be saying is Luke Shaw picks up the ball on the edge of the penalty area left-hand side.
Yeah.
And it's just an extra little bit, but now you know exactly where Luke Shaw has picked up the ball. It might be that he bangs a 40-yard switch from one side of the pitch to the other, but you've got to make sure that 40-yard switch, where's it found Ahmad on the other side? Has it found him midway inside the Bournemouth half? It's all of that. When you're doing
visualize.
That's it. But when you're doing radio commentary, a lot of the time of the commentary is spent giving that pitch geography rather than being able to deliver stats that are relevant to the game. TV commentary is quite different. You've got a little bit more time to be expansive because the pictures are doing a lot of the work for you. That's when you could do with some of the stats that you've written down to fill the gaps that you don't need to fill normally.
100%, and it is such a key difference as well, because you, as you said, you have to create that visualization for your audience when it's on the radio commentary, because you don't have a clue if you're not watching. So exactly. If someone just says Luke Shaw picks up the ball and passes it to Ahmad, where As you've just said, where is he? We don't know. He could have passed it backwards for all we know.
Now, yeah, that's it. You get into the real quirks of commentary here. If you're watching Manchester United or you're listening to a Manchester United commentary and you're a Manchester United fan, if I say to you, Benjamin Šeško receives the ball, we all know that Benjamin Šeško will be the furthest player up the pitch. If I say to you that Diogo Dalot has got the ball, you know that it's wide on the left-hand side or wide on the right-hand side because you understand the positions of the players that you've got used to seeing. The real issue comes for opposition or for players that are further down the football pyramid. So if I go and do a commentary game like I did last year for Sky and I do Blackpool against Liverpool under-21s, have you got any idea of any of those players? No, you haven't. No. So therefore, I need to do that pitch geography. Otherwise, you've got no idea where the ball is.
Yeah, because if you are talking about those more established players that even people who aren't fans of Manchester United will know. I know Šeško's a striker. I know Dalot's a right back. I know Maguire's a centre back. But if it was Man United's under 21s, even some people will know more. But I wouldn't necessarily know. So you do have to create exactly a visualization for me.
Exactly that
makes sense. Yeah. So you've had that experience. I believe you said 3 years now, 3 seasons.
Yeah,
what has been what has been your favourite moment on commentary? Your favourite game to have commentated on?
5-4 against Lyon at Old Trafford last season was absolutely spectacular. Kobbie Mainoo's equaliser, Harry Maguire's winner, make it 5-4. That was a really special night.
I remember watching that game. It was incredible.
Yeah. I've been really fortunate, commentated on Manchester United beating Manchester City at Wembley, where Alejandro Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo scored the goals, and I was in the Wembley press box commentating on the game, and that was special as well to see Manchester United lift the FA Cup. That was magnificent. Ended up on the pitch afterwards having my photograph taken with the trophy. And
that is great.
That was crazy.
How heavy was it? Was it quite a heavy trophy?
I was sharing the lift, so it was only half the weight that it would have been. But right. Yeah, it's a weighty old thing. I did Bilbao. Now, obviously, the result wasn't what Manchester United wanted it to be against Tottenham Hotspur, but the fact that I was in Bilbao for the Europa League final was really cool. Like, that's great. And then I've just had one of the most magical experiences that I've ever had covering football, and that was I went away on pre-season tour with Manchester United this year. So went to Chicago and New York and Atlanta with Manchester United, covering the games and covering, training sessions and, working every single day to cover the tour. And that was a special experience as well. So there's been loads of ups. I've just picked 3 there, but it could have been, any of the other, 300, 400 games that I've done for Manchester United now.
It's incredible because when it is your boyhood club, even, winning 2-1 against any team and you're commentating on it, you're like, oh my God, this is my club and I get to commentate on that. But it is extra special when you get those finals or comeback wins and you get to be a part of that, especially for a commentator, a last minute goal. That's where commentators almost become famous, is the lines they deliver in those moments. Everyone, you won't like this one, but everyone goes back to the Aguero moment, obviously for Manchester City. And it just, people hear it all the time. There's when South Africa in the 2010 World Cup in the opening game when they score that goal, that's another one that always gets brought up. So that those kind of key moments, last minute goals or winners or whatever, is where you make your name really, but also you get your voice will always be. Because I was talking to Mia, who's part of Wrexham, and they got promoted from League One to the Championship, and she was there when when they beat Charlton and got promoted in second place to my club, Birmingham City. And and she said, my voice, no matter what I go on to do in life, will always be attached to that moment where Wrexham achieved that. And she's a fan, and I know you're a fan, so I think that's a brilliant thing to be a part of.
Yeah, it's great. And do you know, it's all really secondary. All of that, for me at least, is very secondary to, have I helped a Manchester United fan somewhere have a better understanding of what happened.
Yeah.
They might be listening to MUTV because they haven't got access to being able to watch the game somewhere. So have they been able to listen to what I've been saying and have a better understanding of what the game has been like? You know, have I helped those people? Partially sighted fans who have no way of seeing the game. I have the privilege of being their eyes.
Yeah.
So that's the person that I think about is those that might not be able to see the game as clearly as the fans in the stands.
Yeah.
If I can help them, then I've done my job, and I think that's where I get the most joy out of my role.
It is incredible, and because Manchester United has such a huge fan base as well, there will be so many supporters who are in that situation where they can't watch the game, whether it be they don't have access or they're partially sighted or whatever it may be. So to be that voice is incredible. But you've also done, as well as the radio stuff, you've done presenting and stuff for Manchester United as well. I imagine you get to meet players, legends, managers. Talk me through that and some of maybe the, I suppose, pinch me moments you may have had, or you know, what it's like to interview those people.
That was a new thing for me. I'd never done, before I started working for Manchester United, never done any TV work really. So, well, no, it's not quite true, but I hadn't really done any presentation work. And that was a learn quick, because you're going to have to do a little bit of this. So as well as dealing with having to learn those skills quite quickly on the job, you then have the situation of, oh, and while you're there, will you go and interview the manager? Will you go and interview Bruno Fernandes? Can you go and have a chat with Rio Ferdinand? Can you sit in a room with... Can you go into... This is a genuine thing. Right, we need you to just nip down the road to that hotel and sit in a room with Paul Scholes and Owen Hargreaves and just have an interview with them for half an hour. Oh, yeah, of course. I'll go and sit in a room with my favourite ever Manchester United player and Owen Hargreaves and just chat. Yeah, I can definitely do that. But instead of sort of expressing the panic that was happening inside, I just went, yeah, okay. And off we went. And it was absolutely brilliant. It's funny. I don't get starstruck anymore. Yeah. I used to. But less so now, because you realise quite quickly the more time that you spend with these people is that they are people.
Yeah, 100%.
They might have been your hero. They might have been somebody else's hero. They might be a Premier League player that's done incredible things, that has 700 appearances, that has won countless trophies. But underneath it all, they're just people, and if you treat them like people and have a conversation with them like people, what you get is good answers and fun interviews, and that's been great. That being said, there are exceptions to that rule. So on Inside Carrington this last Saturday, got a late call to tell us that when's this going out, Ollie?
This will be going out on Friday.
Cool. So got a late call saying Rio Ferdinand was available. And could I be at Carrington the following morning, Saturday morning, to go and do this episode of Inside Carrington with Rio Ferdinand? Now, don't get starstruck, but walked into the room with Rio Ferdinand, who was not only an incredible footballer for Manchester United and West Ham and Leeds, but also for England, and then turned himself into a really solid pundit, and then turned himself into a really good presenter for his YouTube channel. I kind of sat in the room a little bit in awe of how capable Rio Ferdinand is. And do you know what? Just turned out to be a rock solid human being, just a really good guy. So that starstruck wasn't necessarily required, but it was there anyway.
But that is so cool, I think, and you do realize there's people. I mean, we've mentioned some names. Calvin Andrew, who's one. And if you look at the face of it, if you looked at his Wikipedia page, you'd see professional striker, played 450 games in the EFL or whatever. But to me, he's just a mate now, and that stuff is secondary. It's really cool he did that, but it's just secondary. And you do realize when you're interviewing, when you're meeting people, that they are just that they are people. But I also got to have a little experience with Paul Scholes as well, funnily enough, in person. As part of my university, you know, the overlap show they do, the fan debate. I was one of the background people, right? And so you have the set of fans that they put at the front who always speak, and they're mic'd up. We're not mic'd up. All they tell us is come in your team's football shirt and just sit in the back and watch. It was really cool. It was Carragher and Paul Scholes that week, and and basically it was I think the quarterfinals of the FA Cup they were talking about last year, and Man City were involved, Aston Villa, Crystal Palace, blah blah. And he's asking people, and Carragher goes, "So who do you want to win the FA Cup this season? Do you raise your hand if you want Manchester City to win the FA Cup?" And I raised my hand, and he said, "But you've got a Birmingham shirt on. What are you a Manchester City fan?" And I went, "No, I just don't want Villa to win it." And Paul Scholes just bursts out laughing. He comes up to me at the end and he goes, "That was hilarious." And obviously I'm not mic'd up. So they had, in the video, they put a subtitle of what I've said. You can hear it if you put it on max volume, but you know, I thought that was really cool. And after that happened, all my mates were like, "Oh my God, you talked to these people?" I'm like, "Yeah, that was cool." And I went, "I hope they don't edit it out." And they didn't. And I'm looking through the comments. This has got 2 million views. And they're like, "That Birmingham fan was so chuffed with himself." I was like, I got to make Paul Scholes laugh. So
Scholes, here's a story for you. Scholes, he's an absolute diamond, right? For the first time I ever met him, we were doing a TV show for MUTV called The Debate, where basically we went out every week. We had a conversation about stuff that was going on at United, and the venue for this one was at Paul Scholes' son's gym up in Oldham. Now, Scholesy was going to be on it with me, David May, Zara Connolly. Now, of course, I know Maisie. As I mentioned before, we used to host Red Wednesday together back in the day. So I've known Maisie for a little while. And I foolishly, because Maisie is a wonderful wind-up merchant that loves a bit of banter, I foolishly told Maisie that Scholesy was my favourite ever player.
Right.
So the first thing that David May does when he walks in, sees Paul Scholes, was he grabs Scholesy and says, "You're his favourite ever player." Points at me, at which point I'm looking at Paul Scholes, who I'm meeting for the first time ever, just wanting the ground to swallow me whole. I'm like, oh no, this is the most embarrassing thing in the world. And do you know what he did? He walked over and he shook my hand. He went, let's grab a selfie. And I was like, oh, do you know what? So I took a selfie with Paul Scholes, and ever since that day, he's been a diamond. Every time I see him, he's always like, "Hi Liam, how are you? What do you think about the game today?" We have a bit of a chat, might have 5 or 6 minutes together before he wanders off and does some stuff and I go back in the other direction. So yeah, just a diamond of a human being, Paul Scholes.
I love that. And you know, they say the phrase, "Don't meet your heroes," but you did, and he is a diamond. And Paul, because on the overlap, you will see him beforehand on the show. And sometimes, I'm not saying he does this, but sometimes other people, they're different when the show is on compared to what they're like behind the scenes. Paul is not like that at all. He's hilarious on the show. You know, he's really quick-witted, I think.
Dry sense of humor too.
Yeah, I could see why him and Roy Keane would get on, you know, with the dry sense of humor. But he's just a gentleman, and he'll take the time to chat to everyone as well. And that's really cool that he asked you for the selfie, which is great.
Yeah, look, he knew what he was doing. Yeah. To be fair, it was a nice thing to do. He realised that I was cringing internally, and he helped me out. Bless him.
I think that's brilliant. So you met your favourite player of all time. How about managers? Because I imagine that's a lot different. Players, you know, it's about the performance maybe on the day or whatever. But managers, you realise they have the whole world on their shoulders almost. And if it's a win, great, move on to the next. But if it's a loss, it can feel a lot of pressure. What's it like interviewing a manager? Can you tell me the managers you have interviewed since your time working at Manchester United?
Well, since my time in the media, just Manchester United managers, that's Sir Alex Ferguson, David Moyes, Michael Carrick, who took that interim charge bit, Ralph Rangnick, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Jose Mourinho, Louis van Gaal, Eric Ten Hag, and now Ruben Amorim. So, I've had conversations with all of them. Some of them are easier to deal with than others. Some of them are absolutely dynamite, like José Mourinho, box office. Absolutely box office. Every time he opens his mouth, something incredible could come out.
Yeah.
Some of them are an absolute joy. And it's going to sound a little bit like I'm making this up because he's the current Manchester United manager, but Ruben Amorim comes up, high five, bit of a hug. How are you? Good, thanks. How are you? We'll have a little bit of a conversation. He'll do the interview. He says thanks. He shakes the cameraman's hand. He is probably, out of all of them, the most personable that I've worked with. The one that I've probably had the best relationship with. There have been previous managers, just for example, that treated you like it was the very first time that they'd ever met you, despite the fact that it was your 30th, 40th interview with them.
Yeah.
And they treated you with that level of distance. And that, to each their own, right? Everybody's got their own personality. Some people are really comfortable with it. Some people really don't like doing it. People are contractually obliged to be there to talk to journalists after the game. And sometimes they find that really easy, and sometimes they find that really hard. But again, we go back to that thing of they're people, and every person has their own personality and characteristics. And it's your job as a journalist to get the best out of those people. And the only way to get the best out of those people is to understand those characteristics, understand that personality, and approach each interview with that borne in mind, I think.
And I imagine it's that adaptability in you and as a journalist to realise, okay, in your head, this guy maybe doesn't want to be here. So how can I approach this to make sure he's as comfortable as possible in the situation he's given himself? Or someone like Ruben, who you mentioned, is a good people person, happy to do it, blah, blah. So maybe things can be a little more relaxed in a way. And just approach it in a calmer way. And I think that's brilliant because you do have to, if you don't realise what that person's like and you treat everyone this like they're going to respond the same, you're not going to get what you want out of that interview, I think.
If you speak to somebody for the first time and you charge in there and your energy isn't right, you often get short shrift, be that in a pub, in a cafe, in a restaurant, anywhere in day-to-day life. So approaching these things with the right, having good intentions is a solid start.
Yeah.
Not trying to trip them up is the second one. And that, there are people out there that would very much like to trip these people up to get themselves a 5 minutes of fame on social media or whatever. And they have to be aware of that. But I think you're right. I think you've just got to be conscientious in the way that you approach, the same way that you're conscientious in the way that you approach anybody that you might have a conversation with over the course of your life. You walk into a shop, are you going to start being bantery with the person behind the desk? Probably not, unless you know them and you know that that's what they want. And it's the same deal. You've just got to moderate your tone accordingly.
Yeah, 100%. And it is about that person, that situation. You also have to. Football's different in the fact that, well, sports, but football specifically is different in the fact that the result or what's happened on the night can also change the mood of the person. Of course it can. You mentioned earlier, good and bad, right? You win at Lyon, 5-4. Everyone would be ecstatic, I imagine, within the club. The feeling would be incredible. But then you go to the final, and unfortunately you lose in Bilbao, and things are maybe a bit more down. And you, I imagine, as someone who would interview people, would have to adjust your tone to their mood, because if they come in, obviously I know you wouldn't be happy because you're a fan, but let's say you're a neutral journalist who's interviewing it and you come in and you're all smiley after they've lost the Europa League, they're not going to want to talk to you. It would annoy them. Yeah,
exactly that. Moderate your tone, meta language, all of the stuff that you don't really know that you're doing, but you've got to make sure that you're doing. I think also knowing the person. So some managers are really emotional, and therefore you kind of go safe early doors. what did you make of that? Is a very easy starting question for you to gauge how they're feeling, and then you can change your questions based on the answer that you get to that first one. There are some managers that worked for clubs like Rochdale, for example, who would be a better interview after Rochdale had lost than they would had they won.
Right.
Work that one out. It was an easier conversation if they'd lost. All right?
Yeah. I can imagine.
But you don't know that. You've kind of you're kind of feeling your way through it.
And I can imagine maybe if you win, it is kind of, you don't want to give too much away. You don't want to, from the manager's perspective, it depends on the person. They might think, I don't want to see too smug here, or come off a bit showing off type thing, because they know social media is a big part of things now. And if you do say anything that could get clipped, people will take that and run with it and go, this guy's like this. But with a loss, you're analysing a disappointing result. So maybe it's just, we need to do this better. This wasn't great. The referee could have done this, blah, blah, that kind of thing. It's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think the reason that we end up with such copy-paste answers from managers up and down the country is because they know that things get taken and the aggregators grab hold of them and they take them out of context and things are twisted, and, so therefore you get bland and safe rather than, Ian Holloway, who is always box office, and you can understand that. Self-preservation instinct in people is strong. They don't want to put themselves in a position where things are taken out of context, or maybe, emotional answers given in the heat of immediately post-game is not the right way to do it. So, yeah, look, as with everything in life, there is no single way to go about things. You have to moderate what you're doing, adjust, be adaptable, figure it out on the fly, and then do the best that you can do in the situation that you're in. That's essentially the long and the short of it.
It's brilliant, and it's been a brilliant insight. Just got one or two more questions for you. So, you've been a part of a lot of Manchester United, a lot of commentary experiences. We spoke about some of your favourites earlier. Is there any particular game, competition, situation, obviously, like a Champions League final or something? What would be your dream match to commentate on for Manchester
Champions
United?
League, a win in a Champions League final, 100%.
Yeah.
But for me, the bread and butter is always the Premier League. I would love nothing more than to commentate on every game of a title-winning season for Manchester United. That would be special, really special. Might be. Well, I'm hoping that's like next season, but I'm not sure it will be. We'll just have to wait and see.
Well, hopefully, and as I said earlier, then you're providing the support for those who can't watch it as well, but also your name is attached to that moment. And finally, Liam, I asked this to every guest: what advice would you give, if you had to give one piece of advice, to someone who's looking to break through into the industry, specifically into your career of broadcasting and media?
Persistence is key. Knock on every door. Don't take no for an answer. Once you've got your foot in, leverage every opportunity. But persistence is everything. You are going to get knockbacks. You are going to get told no. That's not a no forever. Find a different way. If you give up, you'll never get in. If you keep trying, you stand a chance.
And that is a perfect conclusion to the video. Thank you, Liam Bradford, for joining us. It's been very much appreciated. I've been your host, Oliver Keane. This is Pitch to Profit. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.